There you go. Okay, now you can.
And that won't affect me.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but you can wiggle it around.
All right. All right. Do we have everybody back in the room? We're well nourished and ready to put our thinking caps on. I'll take that as a yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Sue Pemberton. I'm the Associate Manager of Marine Mammal Stranding here. You all pretty much know me, right? I don't need to go through the whole spiel. We're very good friends online. So we're going through our favorite activity, at least it's mine, and I'm going to assume you enjoy it as well. Sleuthing with Sue. So I think we'll just get right into it because we all know how this works. We've all done this before. Our steps, right? Where to begin. We're going to look at the option of ruling things in and out. That's the best way to do it with the resources that we've given you. So we're going to look at the overall size, the flipper sizes and shape, the fur features, the teeth, the vibrissa, the time of year, and other bones that might help us identify an animal to species. And we're just going to jump right into it. So you guys have your pages out, right? And we're going to walk through this. We can, you know, when we do this online, you guys are busy in the chat, but you can just speak out loud. There's no rules, no decorum. This is feral. So any opinions about this animal? Tell me why, Michelle.
Because of the long flippers and the underside with many lines.
The throat pleats?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's got this really elongated front flipper with some scalloping on the leading edge. Are there any other whale species in this area that have that same feature? No, so we can land on that very safely. If you get into some of the other large whales, it might be a little more nuanced and have to look at other things like flippers and shapes and things like that. If we were to try and look if this was a male or female, will we be able to tell with this one?
It looks like an opening is there to the left with a big white spot on the side.
Right, so it's a pretty fresh animal, so it could still be a male or female. When they start to get a little more bloated, one of the first things that come out in the male is the penis will actually extrude from the genital slit. But for now, you'd have to kind of look at this up close. If you're on a survey and you come across a whale, you're really going to focus on contacting us. But if you want to take some pictures of things like that in case it washes out, because it's perilously close to the ocean, then take a couple photos and we'll sleuth it together. We can figure out what sex it is from there.
You know, then you can walk it out and guess that it's 30 feet.
I mean, even better if you can get your tape measure out and grab a quick measurement. We always function under the assumption that it's going to wash back out. So we want to get as much information and things like that from these carcasses. But you're correct, Michelle, this is a very small humpback whale. Make sure you write that in your pages. This is a interactive. Number 2. So it has my foot for scale. Any ideas, anything popping out? It's small, right? So
Canine nose.
what was that?
Canine style nose.
So more of a
Elongated.
right.
You just see what people are saying because honestly, it's what people are. Like if someone says pointy nose, they say pointy nose.
Okay. So a pointy nose. Are there any features that we're seeing straight out of the box where we can eliminate any other species? So remember, when we're dealing with the 6 species, we're very lucky to have 6 species of pinniped that can occur here. It's probably one of the only places on the planet that has that. And they are kind of grouped in the way I like to remember them with the way my brain is. It's 2 fur seals, 2 sea lions, and 2 seals. So I can usually eliminate them based on that group. So based on looking at this little one, what can we immediately eliminate? Seals in general, right? And why is that? What is it about this that it has external ear flaps, and what else? The long flippers and nails on the rear flippers, correct?
Yeah.
All right, so those are all features of what group? Otariids. They are the otariid species. So we can get rid of the 2 seals. So now we have 4 to consider. Is there anything else about this animal that would give you an idea of what it might be? So that would rule out which species? No, the sea lions have, all 4 of them have a t-shirt line on the underside. One of them doesn't have a fur past the wrist on the top side. Which species is that? The northern fur seal doesn't have. So looking at this, do you see a break in the fur on the top of that front flipper? So then we can take away northern fur seal, right? So then we have 3 species. Just off the top of your head, does this look like either one of the sea lions? And why would that be? It has a longish nose. The fur looks luxurious. It's got these really long flippers. So what are we thinking? Right, so we've already eliminated the northern fur seal. If a stellar looked like this, I'd be surprised. It's very small. It is possible that you could come across a stellar sea lion this size, because we do have pups in this area. But they don't really look like that. When they're that small, they still have their black natal coat. So we've eliminated this down to a Guadalupe fur seal. That's our thought. What else can we look for on this? Can we manipulate the fur a little bit to make sure that it's that really luxurious fur? What would we look for if we're looking for fur seal or sea otter fur? Right, it has rubbing, moving it to see if it moves in different directions, as opposed to the hard laying down fur of the 2 sea lions and the seals. But there's something different about their fur that stands out. Do you remember? So this very density is a good observation. You should be able to part the fur and see a buffy undercoat. These guys are fur thermoregulators like otters. And so they spend some time grooming this fur to make sure that it stays nice and, surprisingly, there's air, it's dry, air dried in that buffy undercoat. So this is a little bit confusing in that it's got like a little bit of a buffy bib and a buffy belly that we see and on the cheeks that we see in northerns. So this is why you couldn't look at this and go, oh, that's a northern, because of the buffiness. Because I've had completely black Guadalupes and Guadalupes that look like this, but this is a Guadalupe fur seal pup. And be prepared, we've already had quite a number of them in California, about 6. 2 live, the rest were dead, and I have a feeling we may be heading into a bad year for guad. So just keep your little fur seal hat on when you're out on your surveys. This would be hard to tell. So if you go, somebody asked if it was a male. It would be hard to tell if this was a male just by looking at it because that fur obscures the penile opening. In the videos, if you look at the data collection, videos that we made, there's demonstration videos of sexing these guys, and you find the area of the belly button and run your finger towards the tail, and your finger should run into the penile opening. It is really difficult, and when they're this little, their baculum is very small. It's about the size of a toothpick, so it's hard to feel. And so, you know, so that's something that you would have to really explore in the fur if you wanted to, but this little, you should be able to feel for a baculum if it's not scavenged. All right. Look at that nice beach watch tie on there. And a scale bar. Any ideas jump out? Thoughts, anybody? Which kind? A California and male. So tell me, let's talk about that. What is it that made you think it's a California sea lion, and why would it be a male?
Coloring and size of the neck, I think
So the color of the and the size of the neck. Okay.
And it looks like it has that crest.
So the appearance of a sagittal crest, it's got a little bit of grizzling on the forehead. Does that, so this is his back. That's his back. There's his eye, his muzzle, the top of his head, and then you come down here, his neck, and then his front flipper, which is hanging over the front there. And then there's, you could see a little tiny bit of his rear flippers there. So, so we see a little bit of grizzling on the forehead. That's helpful, but sometimes I see stellar sea lions with grizzling in their forehead, even though they don't have a bony sagittal crest. That coloration can be a little confusing, right? The neck is brown and the back is honey colored. And what species between the two sea lions do we see that are fully honey colored across all ages and sexes? The stellar, but this guy has brown on his neck and head. Stellars do not have brown on their neck and head. It's that uniform honey color that's down at the lower part of this guy's body. So this is a California sea lion. Are we thinking adult male, adult female? It's pretty big based on the scale bar. How would we determine or distinguish an adult male from an adult female? The sagittal crest, the size of the neck is another one. And then what's the number one? What do males have past? Well, if you had to put an adult female and an adult male next to each other, which one is longer? Right, so at some point, the measurement exceeds the maximum of what a female would be, which is probably around 180 centimeters. So if this guy, I would expect a guy like this to be about 200 to 240 centimeters. So at some point, it kind of sizes out of what could be an adult female. There's one other thing that's noteworthy in here that you would probably note on your survey, and that is right here, an entanglement scar. So that's something we're also going to want to know about, because we report that in our data to NOAA. That's something that we consider a human interaction. So it may not have contributed to the death of this animal, but it's evidence that it was impacted at some point by something human caused. So this is a California sea lion, big adult male.
Why would the yellow strip?
That's a beach watch tie.
Yes, but, just that we fitted that high, there's kind of an arc, looks like a big scar.
Yeah, we just talked to, it's right here? Oh, right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be, I mean, these guys fight depending on the time of year, when, somebody was noting a scar, just to around the shoulder. When these guys return from the rookeries from mating season, they're beat up. They're bit, they have, all kinds of wounds on their chest. That could be, from fighting, that certainly that could be a bite mark. Or he just got into a bar fight. I don't know. All right. We're at number 4. This guy's on its back. And it's got the benefit of a scale bar in there. Do we have any first thoughts? Okay, so how are we gonna distinguish between a seal and the other species that are up for consideration? The foreflippers are short, right? They're not extending down past the end of the ribs, right? This is what I use because the otariid flippers, when they're laying at their side, extend past the end of the ribs. With the seals, they're short little stubby things. So we've got short flippers. What are we thinking? We have 2 species to consider if we think this is a seal. So Mary said it looks like an elephant seal based on the back flippers. What is it about the back flippers that would distinguish it as an elephant seal? No nails. Both sides of the flippers are fully furred. That's a feature of both seals. Both of them have fur on the front and back of both the fore and rear flippers. Do we have, so when we're talking about seal rear flippers, right? One of them has nails on the end, one of them does not. One of them has a shallow V, the other one has a deep V. So who remembers which one has a deep V? And if we're looking at this, right. So if we're thinking this is an elephant seal or a harbor seal, right. I'll give you a word of caution. There are harbor seals that are this lightly colored and less spotted than the average harbor seal. But if we're working on the idea that this is an elephant seal, where else can we look that would distinguish it from a harbor seal? The foreflippers, tell me about, well, harbor seals have nails on their front flippers as well. So that's a good, sometimes the shape is helpful of the front flipper. They have a harbor seals? No, they have a front flipper. Otters have a front paw. Yeah. So if we're looking, there's one more place in this photo that you can look that is a slam dunk for distinguishing between the two. You got to say it out loud. People are whispering and making gestures and I want to hear it. Vibrissa, excellent answer. So how would we distinguish between the two? What color, if we're working on this being an elephant seal, what color should the vibrissa be? Black. Does this one have black vibrissa?
Yeah.
Right. So then if it was a harbor seal, what color would those vibrissa be? Right. Yeah, they would be white. Looking at this abdomen, is there a penile opening or no?
No.
I don't see one. So this would be probably, it looks bigger than a pup. So it's probably an immature northern elephant seal. Very thin, but it could be, we only see them when they're in their molt, in their worst times. This is basically how we all see them on the beach anyway, right? It's a luxury to see them at sea having fun. Any thoughts, to give you an orientation, this is, looking at this now, I'm seeing this is a terrible example, but this is the head. This is the back, and then coming all the way down to the end here. And then we have the benefit of a scale bar, so it's relatively small. Any thoughts straight away? I hear harbor porpoise. Tell me why it would be a harbor porpoise. The dorsal fin. What is it? What is it about the dorsal fin that tells you it's a harbor porpoise? Right? It's triangular, it's not falcated. This is a pretty consistent feature of this porpoise and the Dall's porpoise. We can get another species of porpoise here. How would we distinguish between this and a Dall's porpoise? They would have the same type of teeth. Does anybody remember what the features of the teeth are, or how we would distinguish this from, say, a small whale with a muted dorsal fin and a dolphin, say a young dolphin? The spatulate shaped teeth versus what? Like if it was a bottlenose dolphin, how would the teeth look? They would be conical and pointy, right? Where porpoises are consistently, their teeth are consistently spatulate shaped, little flat ends and stuff like that. But looking at this, there's still enough flesh on this animal to distinguish it from a Dall's porpoise. This was a bit of a, I'm throwing a loop here, but I thought I'd take this opportunity to tell you. Dall's porpoises look like miniature orcas. Like they have this really stark black and white body color. So it would be very easy to tell them apart. This is a very common species here. You can see them in the bay. I saw them in the bay a couple weeks ago. You can see them right outside off of Ocean Beach and things like that. But this is a little harbor porpoise. Now, you would have a hard time telling the sex because it looks pretty scavenged over there. This, aside from being a mess, does anybody have any thoughts? Harbor seal, why are we thinking that? We've got short front flippers. White vibrissa, you guys are killing it here. No ear flaps. So if we wanted to make sure, like say, oh, we found some freakish elephant seal that has white vibrissa, where could we look? Where else could we look to see if this is a harbor seal? Because they have a very distinctive feature that no other seals around here have. No, they both seals have nails. My favorite place to find clues is in the mouth. So they have very distinctive teeth. Does anybody remember the features of their teeth? They look like little mountains, right? So they have these very cool teeth that have multiple cusps. Up in the Arctic, it's a very common shape in teeth, but down here, this is the only species that we have here that have very distinctive teeth. So combined, say you looked in the mouth and found those little multi-peak teeth, those white vibrissa, those really short front flippers. This is what I meant about how you can have an animal, a harbor seal, that does not have a lot of spots on it. It does have some spots on it, but not like we're used to seeing the harbor seals out on the rocks with really distinctive spotting. Where else could you look? I mean, I think there's a beach watch tide down here. Could you look at the rear flippers and it would help distinguish? And why would that be? What would be the features of a harbor seal's rear flippers? They wouldn't have the deep V. What would the V be like? It would be a shallow V, but there's one more thing about those rear flippers. What is it? They have nails on their rear flippers. Elephant seals do not have nails on their rear flippers. So they make it kind of easy if you remember all of these party tricks to to think about like, oh, each species has its own really special features, then, you know, especially in the seals, it's very easy to kind of weed through and distinguish it right away. You guys got this one very fast, and I love that for us.
Yeah.
So this is a harbor seal, probably a subadult based on the size of the scale bar. This is another tiny one. Look at the size of that scale bar. So I'm hearing some rumblings. What are we thinking? A northern fur seal. Let's walk through this. Tell me why. Long hind flippers, right? They have obnoxiously long hind flippers. And that's not even represented here in this photo. That like some of the ones that I've seen were, I don't know, I think their mom bought the wrong size at Sears or something. Like they're just super long. So we could grow into them, I suppose. But what is it? What are some other features about this animal that would lead you to believe that it's a northern fur seal? Or is it a little baby sea lion? Or is it a baby stellar? Like let's eliminate, let's practice eliminating. Those are some longish flippers. Can we eliminate the seals? Right? Because that's a pretty tiny, I mean, you could get a harbor seal that little, but does this have any features of a harbor seal? No, so, and elephant seals are that big when they're still inside their mom and 2 months left to be born. So we'll move the seals off of the list of considerations. So we're thinking, if we're trying to distinguish between the two sea lions it could be and the two fur seals it could be, is there anything we can, that jumps out? I heard a little bit of, we got a football head. Does anybody else have a football head? Not you guys, but does anybody in the fur seals? We're not gonna make fun of our friends today. So of the 4 odorides that we have up for consideration, which one has a football head? Northern fur seal. What else can we look for on this animal to see if it's a northern fur seal? The t-shirt line on the front or back flipper? The front flipper? Does this guy have?
Right there.
Right here?
Yeah.
Right. You're gonna wanna make sure that you brush off all of your sand and make sure there isn't some sort of fur on there, because sometimes through decomposition, some of that can come off, but there'll always be like the tiniest little bit of fur if it does have fur on there. If we were trying to distinguish, you know, between a sea lion, say if we didn't already know that this is now a northern fur seal, you know, we could look at the quality of the fur. You can see it's really luxurious. That's something that's really impressive about fur seals, is that their fur just looks flowy and luxurious, which was very attractive to Russian fur traders. So, but you can see these buffy cheek patches that are very northern fur seal, but we saw them on the Guadalupe too, that buffy bib, and then that light stomach. As we saw in the other example of the fur seal, that they can appear there too, but they're pretty consistent with this species. You'll see them almost all the time. This is the size that we see the most here, and we see them at a different time than we see the other babies, odoriids, because they have a shorter period of maternal attendance. It's 4 months. They're born locally out on the fair lawns. And they start turning up here at the end of October. So when we see them, if they're gonna come around, it's gonna be a big pulse from October through the end of the year. Otherwise, after that, then you can see them pretty much anytime. But if we're gonna see them in like an El Nino year, this is the species that would turn up first and in higher numbers during an El Nino year, before an El Nino year. Yes. They do. They look like little teapots out at sea. So fur seals in general do something that's called jug handling. They look like little weirdos out on the ocean, but they'll be laying on their side. I wish I had a picture of it. So they'll be laying on their side. They'll take those obnoxiously long rear flippers and they'll bring them up over the side of themselves and then tuck their front flipper in between and just lay there like a, I don't know why. I don't know what purpose that serves. Maybe it's to warm up or show off, or I don't know, but they do this thing. You see it in Southern Hemisphere fur seals as well. I've seen them on photos on our naturalist where there's jug handling fur seals, but both of the species do jug handling. I think that was our last sleuthing exercise. So let's talk about sex. You know, sometimes this can be really hard and sometimes it's really easy, right? That sometimes it's really obvious, right? What is this one here? That's a penile opening.
Yeah.
I always look for that in between these hips. So if you're always, you know, because sometimes in younger animals, you might have to distinguish between an umbilical hole and a penile opening. So I always look right between the hips here, and it's always going to be there. That changes for elephant seals as the males get older and that hole migrates up further into the middle of their abdomen. So on some of these, let's see. So this one is a male. If you ever wanted to be fancy, you can look in between those rear flippers and you'll only see one hole and not two. That's one way to figure it out. That works very well with fur seals. On these desiccated critters, sometimes they've been heavily scavenged. You'll see that there's a baculum hole and then the baculum, which has been extruded down through the bottom of the animal. You got to poke around a little bit for that. And then even when they're really in bad shape like this, you'll see that this whole area right here is blank. There's been parts that are scavenged. That whole area is blank. Scavengers go for the path of least resistance, especially vultures. So they will go through any hole that's there. So you'll see here, there's no hole there. And it also has two teats right there. There are others, but you can't see them because this one wasn't brushed off. The sand is all over the belly. So that also underscores the importance of brushing sand off. Same with this one, you can see, I can't read that. I don't know what that says, but so here's another one. This was a big adult female stellar. These guys are really hard to manipulate when they're that big, but you could see on her side that there were, especially because she's bloated, those teeth were being extruded. And then this is a little harbor seal. And you can see it there, but how would you distinguish that from a spot, right? So you start at where you think the belly button might live at some point in its life, and you just start pushing pretty steadily down the abdomen towards the tail. You see how it aligns perfectly with the tail right here. If I could use this pointer properly, you're bound to run into it. If you just find the middle of the body, push hard and your finger will fall right into that penile opening if it's there. You could also feel around for it, but that gets hard when some of these guys are little and they're fat. And then I wanted to give you a cuteness palate cleanser because dead animals are gross. I will tell you, this is not the first time I've seen photos of this kind of behavior. This is a very smart, he's probably a full adult male with his own harem now, being a cool sea lion, but he was really super smart, a starving little sea lion, and thought he'd just sneak into his neighbor's house and steal some milk. And the mom couldn't care less. The pup couldn't care less. It's probably getting much richer milk because this milk composition is way different than its mother, because there's a 9-month maternal attendance milk type with the sea lion and a 1-month maternal attendance quality of milk. So he's probably going to be morbidly obese and have cholesterol problems and maybe a heart attack when he's 5. I don't know, but he's also very smart and resourceful, and it happens surprisingly more than you would think it is. This is from Friends of the Elephant Seal, so I'm gonna say Piedras, maybe?
Yeah, probably it is. But I've never seen it in 25 years.
Well, I think, you'd probably have to be in the right place at the right time. So, as usual, our efforts to work with you guys are funded by the NOAA John H. Prescott Marine Mammal Rescue Assistance Program. It's what gives us funding. But I would probably do this for free because I really like working with you guys. So thank you all so much for all the work you do to get information to me. I enjoy sleuthing with you guys. So as always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to email me and let me know what you have and we'll work through it together.
Thank you, Sue.
You're welcome.